Convenience is a condition of North American culture. We love to shop, we love to drive, and for many of us, these things play a big role in constituting quality of life. As a society, our collective love of convenience fuels the demand for the things we want and keeps suppliers in business. Over the past 20 years, since Canada has opened its doors to free trade, more and more of our goods are coming in containers from major Asian ports, and once they arrive here, they're shipped by boat, train, and truck to their final destinations. But there's a problem: congestion. The roads in Metro Vancouver are packed with vehicles, and the traffic can get outrageous at times. To increase trade and transportation capacity, the provincial and federal governments have announced a $3.9 billion gateway project to expand existing highways, build new roads, and upgrade transit systems.
Anyone who's dealt with the Port Mann Bridge knows the traffic congestion issues that are there. Some days, there's congestion there as much as 14 hours a day. That's not acceptable. There is no HOV lane running west on the Highway 1. Right now, on a typical weekday morning, we have traffic backups of about 6 miles. And 6 miles is just too long. I mean, we just can't turn a blind eye to that kind of congestion.
The congestion isn't on the bridge, it's on the approaches to the bridge. 4 lanes of traffic are trying to squeeze themselves onto 2. Obviously there's going to be a backup. Mr. Falcon is proposing doubling the number of lanes leading up to the bridge as well. What that means is that when the project's finished, you've got the same bottleneck twice.
Some organizations are worried that this plan will ultimately work against past fundamental government commitments, including the Livable Region Strategic Plan.
In 1995, the Greater Vancouver Regional District adopted a plan, and everybody signed on to it. And you could summarize that in 14 words. It said we were going to protect the green zone, we were going to build a compact urban region with complete communities, and increase transportation choice. We know we don't want the kind of place that car orientation gives you.
You have to get people out of their cars. The way to do that is to give them something that's attractive as an option. That people have the right to go to GM Place and BC Place Stadium to watch a Lions game or a Canuck game. That's their right,
Apart from highway and bridge expansion, the Gateway plans to expand the current Delta port, despite the fact that nearby Prince Rupert has a brand new port with extensive capacity for further expansion. Its small community is actually welcoming the business, and it's also a full 24 hours closer for Asian ships. Port expansion would also require a new truck route through the Agricultural Land Reserve in Delta and Surrey.
It's the last warm, flat bit in British Columbia, and it has some of the finest agricultural land. So covering that in concrete, building houses and freeways on it, is not the best use you can make of that land. We currently depend on importing most of our food, yet we could grow a lot of it here.
The best part of all of this is nobody, absolutely nobody, ever asked anybody in this community whether they wanted this to happen in their community. They just simply told us, this is the gateway, it's good for Canada's economy, and you're going to get it.
There are also serious concerns over the government's methodology in their planning reports.
There are 2 things that are missing that the BC government refuses to look at. The first one is what's called induced traffic. When you widen a road, more people fill it up and start driving. And the second thing is, when you make it possible for people to move around more easily, then they say to themselves, we're going to relocate, we're going to buy a house further out where it's cheaper. And we know that this always happens when you build freeways, that more people make more trips and that sprawl continues out into the valley.
It's easy to blame corporations and politicians for not doing enough and for exploiting these profitable free trade opportunities. But what about you and I and all of us? We elect these people into government. We drive the 10-minute walk to work. We empty the containers they ship to us. We are all complicit in this problem because we are all complacent.
The really sad thing about all of this is that I'm, as much as anybody, responsible for all of this happening. I'm one, like many of us, who loves to conceal them. And you know what? Most of us can't stop.
We love to talk about it too. 62% of Canadians disapprove of the way the government is handling the environment, and 72% insist more should be spent on protecting it. In Metro Vancouver, 2/3 of us live within 10 kilometers of our workplaces, yet 75% of us use cars for that commute. So why is driving such a natural, everyday habit that seems so impossible to break? Why is there such intense divergence between our talk and our walk? Part of the answer may lie in the messages we see and hear every day.
More money is spent advertising automobiles than any other good or service. Really, we're talking about a huge amount of dollars. It gives the automobile industry a tremendous amount of indirect influence over the editorial content of our media. You'll see huge sections on automobiles that aren't really filled with critical content about automobiles. They're basically reviews of new cars. So it's not just the ads, it's also the entire gamut of promotional culture that goes with the ads. Automobiles are associated with power, with pleasure, with sex. Very few car ads represent the way in which cars or automobility is actually experienced in cities, which is often in the form of gridlock, driving at very slow speeds, and the inefficiencies of this form of transportation. And when you're sitting in those lineups to cross the Port Mann Bridge, the images of the automobile ads are as far away from that experience as you can imagine.
One lane of freeway can move 2,000 vehicles per hour. At the average capacity of 1.3 people per car, that's 2,600 people per hour. If only 15 of those vehicles were full buses, that would move an extra 1,300 people per hour.
Cars are not an efficient way of moving people, but here there's not enough transit for them to get on. And if you provide people with good alternatives, with fast, frequent transit service, they will use it. If you make that attractive and cheap, they'll use it even more.
Often we are left looking to other cities for ideas. For example, there's a surplus of interurban rail capacity on the SRY line between Langley and New Westminster. It'd be possible, and very cheap, to run a passenger train between freight schedules on this route.
The city of Ottawa did this, and they ran a very successful little thing called the O-Train. 2 diesel rail cars that just shuttle back and forwards and move thousands of people. Now, we're just saying we don't know if this is going to work, but why can't we try? You could go and borrow them, or you could lease a few for a couple of years. You don't have to spend vast amounts of money on a project like this.
A couple of years ago, I was at a conference in Copenhagen.
They had a very clever policy. We'll gradually reduce the amount of space that we devote in our city to car parking and then to car movements. And they said 0.5% as a target annually. And after 40 years, because that's how long they've been doing it, they've got a hugely different city. And everybody likes it.
There's as many bicycles on the road as cars. And just seeing that, and the way in which that changes an urban environment, you get this visceral sense of living together as a community.
People like being together as people, not as people stuck in metal boxes shouting at each other.
The Gateway Project may boost the economy, but now, more than ever, it's time for Metro Vancouverites to rethink both our priorities and the very way we live. We need to take personal responsibility for how we allow our wants to overshadow our needs, because the convenience we love comes at a huge cost.
We need to be doing some serious thinking about what the future looks like. And it's not business as usual. It's not more of the same. It's different. And it's different for profound and important reasons.